Ready? Oh no, my video stopped. No.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. Push the buttons on. We'll be in just a second here.
Got it. I don't.
All right, are you ready? All right, we'll call to order the Stevensville Town Council meeting. Today is Thursday, August 12th, 2021. Ms. Bertha, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Allen?
Here.
Councilmember Devlin?
Here.
Councilmember Ludington?
Here.
Councilmember Wandler?
Here.
All right, if you'd please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, we'll entertain public comments from citizens on items that are not on the agenda this evening, but under the jurisdiction of the town of Stevensville. If you'd please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and sign the sign-in sheet. Is there any public comment on items not listed on tonight's agenda?
Bob Michelson, 222 Turner Street. The town of Stevensville has spent $49,986 for computer service first call from January of 2020 to August 21st of 2021. Reviewing the claims back in 2018 and 2019, I had brought this up during the budget meetings last year. The town of Stevensville only spent $856.94 for 406 computers for computer service. The town of Stevensville has paid $28,892.90 to first call computers, new administration computers and maintenance. $64,450 to Kelly Connect computers, bringing the grand total to $142,728.90 for computers and computer service. Add the My Sidewalks computer program, $43,000, and I come up with $175,728.90. How's that for responsible spending? Like to read something to you? It took you long enough to figure out my former user profile name, LMAO. You and your nutcase wife, Jim and Leanna, are just plain ignorant, and thank God you are not on the town council anymore. You crazy people need anger management classes, and I will block you now, not block you, unblock you like your crazy wife does, LOL. This is coming from the mayor of Stevensville.
Mr. Michelson,
Masquerade.
that is not true. Nope. Mr. Michelson, I'm going to stop you.
And I'm going to tell you right now.
No, Mr. Michelson, Mr. Michelson, I'm going to clarify for the record and for you, I am not Sinte on Facebook. You have no proof that I am? No, you don't. I am not Sinte on Facebook. I don't have the time for an alter ego on Facebook. I have no interest in it. Just put the kibosh on it right now. The town has no jurisdiction over the matter. If there's any further public comment on that matter, it'll be dismissed. We won't hear it.
Protect yourself, Mr. Dewey. My name is Leanna Rotowa. Cynthia apparently doesn't like me. 204. This is not about Cynthia, but it should be. These are your published rules. One, you expect that commentators will refrain from disrespectful displays. No personal attacks. Yet this rule does not apply to the mayor or certain council members. This blatant display of intimidation continues at almost every meeting. Citizens who have the right for public participation are constantly ridiculed, called derogatory names, and humiliated in front of the town. This is what you've done to me, Mr. Mayor, and no apology. This needs to end, and end tonight. It disparages the dignity of the office you hold. Yes, some members of the public are upset and angry with some of you, yet you ignore the underlying issues. You are not listened to, our concerns are brushed aside. No one appointed you or elected you to treat the public the way that you consistently do. Stop it. Stop it now. Thank you for listening if you did. One other thing, twice I've been in town hall and been screamed at by my employees there. They're not yours. I understand you told them not to interact with the public. Laura told me that I was a horrible, angry old woman. I got an email from Janelle telling me she was going to have her attorney contact me because I mentioned that she was way behind on the agenda minutes. And tonight there's 3 agenda minutes, and I understand that probably our 2 new members will probably vote to approve them. You need to abstain. You weren't here for that. You've been here for very, very few meetings, if any. I think I'm done. Good night, Mr. Sente.
Is there any further public comment on items not listed on tonight's agenda?
Carolyn Mickens, 211 Buck. And I know you can't answer questions, but I know that last summer in the 100 block and the 300 block of Buck Street, the French drains were cleaned out. There's French drain in front of 211 Buck that needs to be cleaned out because I put in $8,000 to take care of the flood caused mold under the house. So I would greatly appreciate it if the town would see to cleaning out that French drain so that it doesn't flood the house anymore. Thank you.
Any further public comment? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes. The council has before them for consideration tonight meeting minutes from 5:13, 5:27, and 6:10.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Devlin and seconded by Ms. Wandler to approve all 3 sets of minutes. Any council discussion?
Yeah, I would like to make a correction there in the minutes for May 13th. There is a couple of references to finances and fiscal responsibility, and it's incorrectly spelled.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments on the minutes from council? Any public comment?
Tim Cruz, 316 9th Street. Regarding minutes, this is just a general comment, it's not a question. When I was on council, I made it a point to go back and listen to all the council minutes before I voted on them and approved them, or disapproved them, or corrected them. As mayor, I read diligently each council minute and sent it back several times for corrections. So the comment is if you're doing your due diligence, I presume you're going back and listening to all the council meetings as you're reviewing the record so that you can make sure the record is accurate. Thank you.
Any further public comment on the minutes? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote to approve the minutes as corrected with Mr. Ludington's comment. Ms. Berthoud.
Councilmember Allen,
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington,
Aye.
Councilmember Wandler.
Okay, next for council's consideration is claims, approval of biweekly claims, that is, claims 16913 through 16969 are listed on your agenda. This evening, we were notified by HDR Engineering that they need a check to the Department of Environmental Quality to submit plans for the Park Avenue sewer main extension in the amount of $477. So with council's blessing, we'd like to add claim 16970 in the amount of $477 to the Montana Department of Environmental Quality to your claims list. The claims given to you this evening on your table include a correction to the claims that were included in the packet, and that is a reduction in the bill to our inspector contract, inspection contract. When we audited the inspections that he had listed, there was a miscalculation in fees. So we reduced that bill, and the correct amount is listed in the packet before you. I don't recall which claim it is, though.
It's 16964.
16964. Thanks, Wendy. Construct Montana, the correct amount is $11,105.75. Do I hear a motion to approve claims as presented?
I move to approve the claims as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Ludington and seconded by Ms. Devlin to approve claims as presented this evening. Council discussion or questions?
Claim number 16942. There is, it says VE Solid Waste, fund number 2394. It's $25.07, but I'm not familiar with fund 20.
That's the building code inspection fund. They pay a share of the town hall garbage. Any other questions? Ms. Wandler?
On claim number 16924, I don't understand the seller paid after house closed, the little and private company paid everything on the town.
Sure. So this claim batch has a number of those. So what happened was when a property sells in Stevensville, those title companies will contact the town to get a closing balance for their water and sewer bill. We provide that, and they include that in the closing charges when they close out the property sale. Occasionally what happens is some property owners receive, right after their closing, they receive a water bill in the mail from the town, which is the case here, and they pay it. But their closing already paid the water bill, so we have to give them their money back. And that's that process. Ms. Devlin.
Claim 16969. It's our liability
Sure.
insurance. That's really high in comparison to last year. There's quite an increase.
Yeah, so the liability invoice Last year, a year ago, was about $23,000. It's gone up 130%. We contacted MMIA to kind of do some research and verify that was the correct amount. Our mod went from 1.4 to 2.4 this year. The way that works is the last 5 years of losses stay on a record for your mod factor, which is how your liability insurance is calculated. The last 5 years of claims to our liability program resulted in a total paid of $288,000
Over 5 years.
over 5 years. Yeah, a good share of those are sewer backups that occurred primarily in 2017, and the Public Works Department has done actually a really good job of curbing that and making sure sewer backups are less frequent because they are costly. So a good share of that is sewer backups. However, what's more of a share is the recent truancy lawsuits that the MMIA covered. One lawsuit was covered against the town of Stevensville, and one lawsuit was covered against Bob Michelson.
Do we have those amounts?
Those amounts add up into 6 figures. I don't have them specifically, but it's 6 figures worth of losses.
From 2 lawsuits against the town and then 1 directly against Mr. Michelson. Is that what you
A single lawsuit against the town and a single lawsuit against Mr. Michelson. The insurance company covered both lawsuits. Combined, they add up to 6 figures of losses. And those losses will stay on our mod factor for 5 years. The way you see the allocations done on the claim sheet is that we calculated what our liability insurance policy should be based on a mod factor of 0, which is sometimes hard to attain. That means you don't really have any liability claims, but you pay something for insurance. So we calculated that at 0, and then we allocated that based on the amount of payroll we pay in each department. Then what we did is we took whichever department was responsible for the losses. So of that $288,000, whatever percentage, for example, the sewer department contributed in losses, we allocated that to the sewer fund. And like so through the rest of the departments, as you see there. Obviously, that resulted in a very significant hit to the general fund budget.
So do you know the previous year, so 16 probably came off from last year. What kind of claims were on that, do you know? It's 2017 was already, and they say the sewer backups, that was already figured in last year's mod and last year's premium.
There wasn't any claims in 16. We didn't have any liability claim in 16 prior to that. The next claim was in 2015.
So we had 0 drop off and we added a 6-figure digit.
Correct. In losses, yes.
So the increase was as a result of the liability to the council. And TH, what is that liability?
Town hall administration, yeah.
PD.
Yeah, so those are each of the lines that in the budget, the departments that contribute a portion to the total invoice. So you'll see those departments that have lower dollar amounts either didn't have losses or their losses were very low. For example, there was I think a Parks and Recreation claim with an incident at the swimming pool, very low loss, but we covered it. The insurance company did. And so you'll see Parks does have, or rather the pool has a little bit higher share of that bill. And then, those departments that have a higher liability loss because of previous claims carry more of the bill. ordinarily what we would have done is allocated the entire bill based on payroll. That would have been upwards of $20,000 hit to the police department's budget because they're the greatest share of our payroll. That isn't fair to the police department necessarily to penalize their budget or to inflate their budget for a liability invoice that they really have no control over, because there are no claims allocated to the police department in this mod from a liability perspective, which I think speaks a lot to our police department and their ability to limit liability to the town of Stevensville, because a lot of other cities have a hard time with liability in police departments. We don't have that problem. So, you know, it's fair to say that, you know, they have a smaller share of that bill. Now, it's designed to incentivize departments to limit their liability. So by doing this, we've incentivized the sewer department to cease letting things back up. And they've already taken proactive steps in recent years to ensure backups are less and less frequent.
I know from the line of work that I'm in that sometimes the insurance company will, there's negotiations that can happen. Programs that they have that you can go through to lower your liability, steps you can take within an organization. And then they give you percentages off of your insurance. Was that offered at all in this case?
What MMIA does offer is risk management education with the organization. So they'll come in and do as much risk management training as we ask them to do, and they'll do a lot of that at no charge whatsoever. However, the caveat to that is it's designed to prevent future losses, and it doesn't necessarily forgive you from past losses. MMIA is not like a typical insurance company. In fact, it's not an insurance company at all. They're an insurance pool of the rest of the municipalities in the state. So whatever losses they pay on our behalf, the pool is going to expect us to pay them back. We saw an increase in property insurance this year specifically for vehicles. And we didn't necessarily see any vehicle losses in Stevensville in the last fiscal year. However, there were some high dollar losses in other cities in the state, which resulted in all of us seeing a higher property rate. You know, Billings lost a fire engine, so that was a heavy loss. And then there were a few other crashes across the state with vehicles and apparatus. So we all, you know, all 126 of us across the state, cities and towns, have some share in the pool. And so there's not really necessarily a rebate program unless your liability comes down really low and you pay more into the pool than what you paid out in losses. It'll take us a while to get there. It's an unfortunate situation because there's, you know, it's an incredible increase in insurance for us for something that's preventable.
So to clarify, it says liability PD. So if our police officers, again, nothing that we've been very lucky, if they were found responsible to have hurt somebody, this would likely, those damages would likely come out of this.
Correct.
So our police department has been charged $509, which is insignificant. Same with our fire. And then our council is at $31,000.
Correct.
And our town hall, $13,000.
Correct.
So our council and our town hall is more likely to hurt somebody than our police officers.
That's correct. Based on the invoice, yes. Yeah, and these numbers don't reflect losses necessarily, like money paid out in claims. It just reflects what we owe the insurance claim, or we owe the insurance pool. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's relative to the risk of that department. That's a good way to put it. And one other note, last year we had a similar conversation when insurance premiums for the liability program increased to $10,000. So now we've seen a $10,000 increase year over year, and now we're experiencing a much larger increase to the tune of 130%. Any further questions from council on the claims? Public comment?
Michelson, 222 Turner Street. I have a question on the claims as far as the BD phone for 15005. I reviewed the contract again that we signed with our building official last summer, and I can't find anywhere where we supplied a phone and the monthly bill for that. And also for Sage Hill Plumbing for 1165. Okay, sewer line 3rd and Park. They asked what that's about, Brendan.
Does the council object to answering? So the building department phone, we do not supply the building official or our contractor with a phone. However, we have a phone line that's under contract still, and we're waiting for that contract to expire so we can cancel it. The camera bill for East 3rd Street was to camera a main that was too small for our camera, and we had to call in a specialist to bring in their camera that was smaller and could navigate the line more easily than ours. Ours got stuck.
And also one more. Construct Montana LLC for 11,514.70. May I ask what that's about?
That's for quarterly inspections. That's paid to the contractor who conducts our inspections
On.
for building code safety.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Is there any further public comment on the claims? All right, hearing no comment, we'll go ahead and call for the vote on the motion to approve claims as presented this evening. And that is claims 16913 through 16970. Ms. Berthoud?
Councilmember Allen. Aye. Councilmember Devlin. Aye. Councilmember Ludington.
Aye.
And Councilmember Wandler. Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. We'll move into administrative reports this evening, and we'll start off with the airport report. We have Airport Manager Tim Smead for you this evening to review airport activity.
Yes, how are you this evening? Good, good. Fire activity still continues at the airport. That Forest Service land use agreement has been in place since the 31st of July. Everything's kind of laying low still right now. They're still moving a lot of resources around through mainly California and Washington still. So it's a little bit quiet right now. So they're only having one team and one crew up here full time. So changes happen, and I'll continue to keep you guys up to date as well as the users on the airport. What's going on with there? We had Choice Aviation out of Hamilton. When they stayed with us, we had a lease agreement with them along with a flowage fee agreement with them on their fuel. And I have chased down this money for a couple of months now, and I finally made headway late this afternoon. And it's going to take an invoice from the town to pull some of it. The other half is going to be on them because they've got to figure out how many gallons they flow through to get that money down to it. So they had some internal stuff that's going on locally here in Hamilton and then organization wise. So we will get our money here for that probably within the next 2 weeks. I've ventured to say I talked to Troy Hunter today about that. Then we had past 3 days, we had some coal tar sealing going on the ramps, as well as some striping that needed to be done. They were slated to be up for 3 days, and they were up for 2. It was wonderful. They were pretty fast, good crew, very respectful, and made it in and out really quick. The gate project that's being worked on, I have an agreement with Padlock Electric for the new automatic vertical pivoting gate. That came back quite a bit higher than we anticipated, and the airport engineer was able to go back to the FAA and get the remaining funds for that. So the gate will be 100% fully funded by the FAA. So that's great news. Quite expensive to put that in, but it'll be well worth it up there. Also, we got some pretty exciting news. I got a call from the EAA out of Missoula, inquiring about doing some ultralight flying out here. Ultralight flying is growing into a pretty big thing right now, especially with electricity. The electric aircraft that are out there now can go over an hour in flight, which is massive. It's pretty huge. So they're looking for a place to fly. They're part 103 operations, so they're able to fly up here at this airport, wanted to know if we could utilize a grass strip. I made a call to the FAA. We are in compliance, and the next day we were mowing the grass out there. So, looking forward to having some of that traffic come down here, and that's going to work well into prospective event that we're working on for October at the airport, late October. I'm not going to give any detail on that right now, just not sure about anything. But to work hand in hand with the EAA to bring a little bit of life back to this airport up here and get the community involved into it, be a wonderful thing. That's what I got.
Any questions from council?
I just have a statement. I really appreciate your correspondence that you've been having with us
Sure.
via email, and it's really nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim.
I've also appreciated that correspondence, and it's been, although sad, it's been really enjoyable to see those cool planes up at the airport, the helicopters been parked, and that's really cool
That's pretty
too.
neat. Yeah, it's kind of nice when you come up over the hill and you see that iron sitting there. So absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the community development report in terms of building activity is in your packet for your review. We've supplied you with a supplemental report on your desk there, and that reflects the corrected building fees after Laura went back through and audited building permits and made sure we were spot on in those. So there's an adjustment, and that relates back to the fee change that you saw earlier in the claims. In terms of planning and zoning, we do have a request now from Mr. Croce on the development he's proposed. I think it's 36 lots adjacent to Creekside. They've just asked us this afternoon for a pre-application meeting. So we're coordinating with department heads on availability to try to get something scheduled there. Once that pre-application meeting occurs, I expect, within a couple of weeks from that, they'll have an application for preliminary plat submitted to the town with the appropriate fees, and then we'll undertake the preliminary plat process for that subdivision. So otherwise, in community development, outside of the building department realm, the zoning activity is relatively low, other than the regular calls when a property goes on for sale about zoning and what they can do with it. So we're moving along on those things there. Finance report. Ms. Planty is here this evening to kind of just give an overview of what she has going on. Wendy?
Good evening, mayors and member of the council. So I'm into my third week here. I just want to give you guys a brief overview of what I've been up to. I'm currently working on updating all our personnel records. We have an auditor coming at the end of the month, so I want to get them in order before the auditor's here. So it's Storm and Associates that will be coming to the office August 30th. And they're going to work on our 2021 fiscal year audit. So they will be here. They're anticipating 4 to 5 days to complete all our field work. And then, so speaking of audits, our town is currently behind on audits. So once we get 2020 done, then we can go into 2021, but we have to do our bank reconciliations through 2021 to schedule our audit for that, for our next 2021 audit to be completed. So once I get all the bank reconciliations done and caught up, then we can schedule that audit. And those are due, is that December 30th?
Correct.
Okay, December 30th. And then once we get all the bank reconciliations, I plan to have a monthly financial report to you guys, but I'd like to get caught up on those so I can make sure everything's accurate. And then the other thing, we're currently working on our preliminary budget, and the mayor will address this in his executive report. And that's really all I have so far.
Questions from council?
Why are we behind?
Your bank reconciliations were never completed. So I believe they're completed through 6/30 of 2020.
Through 6/30 of 2020?
Yes.
You're gonna be able to meet the deadlines for reconciling, you know?
Yeah, we should be, as long as we don't run into a bunch of problems. I think we should be able to reconcile fairly fast, honestly.
You do these a month at a time, is that correct? Like if we were caught up today, we would be working on them.
That's correct. Usually your finance course is like a month behind though, because you know, you're waiting for your bank statement, but they should be monthly.
How long do you think it takes to do a standard month?
I guess I don't know here. I've never done one. Like ours would take a couple of days.
A couple days?
Yeah.
And were you ever behind previously?
No. Like we would maybe miss a month if we went on vacation, so we'd just extend our financial report, but not necessarily be behind and reconcile.
But not a year behind?
No.
Any further questions from council?
You're doing HR as well, correct?
Correct.
I guess there was an issue with W-4s.
There's a few issues with many of the HR records. Yes.
What are you doing to get
So
that fixed?
I went through all of the records and I have a list of everything we're missing.
Okay,
And I don't know that it's necessarily missing or if it was taken out and put into storage, but I'd like to just get them up to date and current with what I'm doing.
so it's not something that recently happened, this is something that happened in the past?
Yes, I mean, they're just not, like a lot of them are missing your I-9 or your W-4 or your Montana W-4. Because you know, when they changed the W-4, Montana has the W-4 now, so.
Right, but that was changed in 2020,
Correct.
and we're in 2021.
Correct, but a lot of them don't have that 2020 information in them. So I'd like to get them caught up before the auditors come, because they usually will audit your personnel records too.
Right, so you, okay.
We found a number of our seasonal staff returned, but their files were moved to inactive. And then what happened before Wendy showed up was we purged the inactive drawers and moved that into archives. And we think that a number of those seasonal employees were moved to the archives and shouldn't have been before we purged it. So they were moved over prior to Mr. Underwood's departure. Then the seasonals came back. We didn't realize the files were in the archives. So that's part of the reason we're missing a number of things.
You don't foresee that being a compliance issue?
If we can get them all corrected now, and if they are in the computer correct, it should be okay. But you know, they're working on 2020, the audit. So they'd probably be more looking at 2020 records versus 2021.
So this,
The audit that they're coming to do is for 2020.
right. I guess I'm confused. Montana W-4s came out in 2020, so you're saying that they were not handed out for employees of 2021?
I guess, I don't know, I wasn't here, so I believe Montana W-4s came out in 2020.
I'm sorry, you had just said they were missing, so I'm trying to figure out, is it for 2020 that they're missing, or is it for 2021 that they're missing?
So I guess like the seasonals, I believe they were employed in 2020.
Right.
So I think their records got put away. So all we have this year for them is an application currently. So we need all the information for them to be up to date.
Any further questions for Ms. Planky? Okay. Fire Department, Chief Motley.
So the stats are in your packet, but real quickly for July. We have 34 requests in the town, 37 in the district, 1 mutual aid. Out of the total requests, we had 53 medical responses or requests. Year to date, we're at 442. So we're on track to set a new record for requests for service, which not necessarily is a good thing, but it is what it is. The bigger piece to that is, as you guys will notice and have noticed, that the majority of what we do is medical response, medical calls. This month, the month of August, Marcus Daly has 17 unstaffed shifts for Stevensville. So consequently, what that equates back to is the fire department will step up and run shifts and cover calls while we wait for transport to come from Victor, Hamilton, Darby, wherever.
The issue is a staffing issue with Marcus Daily. They are like, not unlike other businesses out there, looking for employees to come to work, to fill shifts and provide the service. So consequently, during this time, we're gonna see a lot more requests, and we'll probably have more potential for transport. We are situated where we can definitely handle that and take care of that as the need arises or comes up. But it's something that the town, the citizenry, we need to be aware of it, we need to watch it, and we need to be concerned. I mean, as those numbers come up, those requests come up, and time away for our volunteers from their employment and everything else in life is also going to increase. Contrary to that, our volunteer staff numbers are not increasing, they are decreasing. So we're going to get caught in the catch. So, we're doing what we can do to try to, bolster our ranks and our roles. As we bring in new members and all that, it is going to have to cost to uniform and equip and all those other fun things. That's what we have to do to provide the service. So things are changing and they're moving, and in the medical end of things, there's just a lot of requests for service in the medical satellite. We are more of a elder retirement type community, so we see a lot more of those types of requests. Yeah, we're capable of handling it. We're keeping up. We're doing our deal. That's all good and fine. But those numbers are going up, and they're going up rapidly. And our reliance back on the local ambulance service is getting less because they're having staffing issues as well as everybody else does. So that's kind of what's going on in a nutshell there. On a real positive note, over this last weekend, we did our annual muscular dystrophy fundraiser, or Fill the Boot, and the citizens stepped up to $65,000 in that 6,500 in that 2.5 hour period of empty out your ashtray, let us some people in your car, which is an all-time high. So that's good job. Other than that, training around about it's well attended. Really, there's no real fire activity to speak of. Now, one question I do have: do we have internet access at the SRE?
Yes.
Okay. Generally, when we do have those source service crews and they utilize that SRE building, it's really nice to provide them internet access so they can do their reports and all that other fun stuff that they do, and then also for the crew members in their downtime up there overnight, whatever, they can have internet access. And in my mind, that's a little service that we can put out there as a lure, convenience for them for the bigger picture, trying to get them here full time. We have a full-time steady income from forests to help offset some of these different costs, these different things. I mean, that would be a great one for the town and the community to get a full-time Forest Service contract up there. So, I mean, that's a great deal. I was up before they came in and cleaned out that whole building, blew it all out, cleaned it all out, made it so it was not livable without all the hobo spreaders. But yeah, we try to put our best foot forward for them. So that's what we've been doing. We do have our repair underway on our 2011 or gas truck. So that repair is underway. Hopefully we get it back sooner than later, but we really don't have a hard timeline on that. We kind of depend on what all they find when they get into it, but it is underway. Insurance is taking care of it, so that's a good thing. Any questions?
I have a question. How do we recruit volunteers? Because I think so often we have young people and people in this town that want to volunteer and they just don't quite know how. And they think that volunteering means that you're cleaning up after creamery or taking tickets or whatever. How do we recruit people to the fire department?
So that's a great point. Yeah, the perception is, oh, I'll volunteer, I'll clean up after creamery, good, great. Yeah, it's about a 300-hour a year commitment, which is a real eye opener for a lot of people that do fill out an application and come in. So how do we volunteer? We volunteer or we recruit via our website. We recruit during different events. Word of mouth generally is our best recruitment tool. I get a new neighbor who moves in, I go, hey, I'm on the fire department, nice to meet you, talk about, volunteering, blah, 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 and promote, give it that 2-minute elevator speech, if you will, to try to sell, volunteering in the service in the community and that part of it. That's our best, most effective way. However, our banner on Main Street brought in a bunch of people in a big hurry, which we really weren't quite ready for the influx that we got. So then consequently, what happens is, this is great, yes, we'd love to have you. We don't have any equipment to issue you to put you out in the field. And I mean, it's over $3,000, it's about $3,600 per person to get them geared up. We just don't have that hanging in the closet waiting for said volunteer to show up, because one, we're not sure what size we need for said volunteer. So the other side of that coin is we get a volunteer, we order the PPE for them, and we're 3 to 4 months before we get that in. What happens is our volunteer is all gung ho, ready to go. We don't really have anything for them, and it's hard to put them into a training without the equipment. And then the interest wanes, and then said volunteer is doing something else. So it's kind of hard to retain that way. In the offset to that is we do try to involve them as much as we possibly can. We do try to find adequate gear that will, suffice for the interim time. But you'll see coming up in budget, there's a pretty good sized number in there looking for turnout gear, because we do have volunteers that are involved, but we need to get them properly clothed and PPE'd up. And that's what those ones are for. So that's kind of the catch game. But yeah, that's how we recruit. Florence Fire had a grant for a recruitment program, and you may hear the ads every now and again on the radio, volunteer for your local fire department, those types of things. And that is something that Florence Fire put together through a grant, but it does cover the whole county. But that's how we recruit. Yeah.
So can you be a volunteer and drive like an ambulance if that's where we're short? I can totally understand that we can't have 40 people walk in and say they want to be a volunteer firefighter, and it's $3,500 a pop, and they don't quite understand the commitment.
Right.
Does that include ambulance drivers, or no? Can we not have volunteer ambulance drivers?
Yes, everybody we have is volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
The whole county is volunteer, other than Marcus Daily Ambulance, which are employees. So yes, I can have a fireman be the driver of the ambulance. However, if we're transporting, we have to have a legal ambulance crew, which is 2 EMT qualified personnel. So if I take a non-qualified EMT qualified personnel and put them in the seat, that's great. I still have to have 2 in the back versus 1 driving and 1 in the back. Now I'm using 2 volunteers instead of 3. So that's kind of how that game is played. Yeah.
Now I
They
understand the
definitely
17 shifts.
Yeah, we can definitely utilize our volunteers in all different aspects. Yeah.
Okay, anything further for the chief?
Marcus, obviously, you must be involved with Marcus Daily and trying to figure out how they can better staff their ambulance. Do they have a plan in place, or are they working on something, or they let you know? what's happening?
The communication between them and us and other fire departments up and down the valley is pretty tight-lipped. It's not something that, hey, look, we don't have, they don't, they just rotate different crews from different areas and try to cover and fill. And yeah, I mean, last night we waited for Hamilton to show up. We didn't deem that it was as emergent as we need to load them up and get going right now. So we felt that what the case was one that we're fine. We can wait that extra 15 minutes before they get here, 20 minutes before they get here, and it's not that critical. Now, if it is a critical situation, no hesitation. We're going to make the call. We're going to load. We're going to go. We're not gonna hesitate and wait if it's that critical. So the communication piece, no, it's not that prevalent. Way we get our information is when the crew from Hamilton shows up, because you guys understand that there are no or paramedic buses or ambulances in the county right now. Probably won't be for a couple hours. That's our communication link with them. And then we know, okay, great. So when the page goes off within the next couple hours, the responding ambulance from wherever is going to be delayed. And we take that into account when we get there, and yes, Mrs. Smith needs to go now, we're loading and we're going. No, it's really not that critical of a transport. We can, for terminology, stay and play, get histories and do other things and provide care as we wait for that transport piece. So that helps us make those types of decisions. The communication really is at the operations level, from one crew to another crew, back and forth, not necessarily from management at the hospital. I think it's kind of a telling thing that, oh man, maybe 10 years ago, there were one ambulance, maybe two ambulances within the fire departments up and down the valley. Now, every fire department has an ambulance for the same reason, so they can go out and provide initial care, initial response while they wait for a transporting agency. We're very, very fortunate. We have a 24/7 staffed ambulance. Great, but when Hamilton goes for transport to Missoula or Helena or Great Falls, because COVID beds are all full and that's where COVID patients are being sent, and they're being transported via ambulance, via a ALS staffed ambulance, that crew is now out of its local area for 3-4 hours, 6 hours, whatever, and that position has to be backfilled some way, somehow. And then you couple that with just staff shortages and people going, you know what, I'm not gonna play in that field right now because of the exposures or whatever they deem. Yeah, staffing's low. So something to kind of keep in the back of our minds and watch for. But currently we're able to keep up and do what we're doing. And we're actually very well positioned because we can transport and we can bill for that transport, and we're in a great position for that. So one day at a time.
I have two things I'd like you to address. Do you think that when Kootenai County comes in, Marcus Green will provide that for us?
When Kootenai Clinic,
Yeah.
You know, I'm not really sure what all services they will offer out of that clinic, but I have my doubts it'll be anything emergent. I doubt that it'll be an emergent clinic at all. I mean, the community medical center clinic that's in town now, we respond to there on any type of a emergent medical call. That's all ambulance driven. They don't do anything with those. That's all done through the ambulance. So I would have my doubts that we'll see a lot of benefit on the medical staff, emergent level from the clinic.
You have EMTs and paramedics on the fire department?
We do not. We are at an EMT basic service currently. We used to have a couple medics. They've moved on. We have a few people that are a intermediate. It's not intermediate anymore. They've changed their classifications, but they're able to do intravenous. They're able to do IVs and some different skills above what the basics can do. So we do have a few of those guys, but again, we're a volunteer. We are not a scheduled staff ambulance crew. It's a pickup game. We don't know who's coming on any given call.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Parks and Recreation, Mr. Sunstein.
All right. So in my report here, spent the whole week last week preparing for creamery, trimming trees down at the park, mowing the grass, watering stuff, trying to make it look as good as we could for the community. And on that vein of creamery, I just want to thank every other department. Like, I have one seasonal staff member and then myself. Everybody stepped up to help with the parks, get it ready, make sure parade, everything. I just want to thank police, fire, public works, town hall. Like, it was a valiant team effort to get that done, and I think it went pretty well myself. I've heard a lot of good things about it, so just want to give a thanks for that. Father Valley Park, we got the irrigation fixed, electrical wires were crossed, we needed a new outlet there, we had a solenoid out. A couple different issues through troubleshooting. It was, all right, we fixed that, still not working. All right, we fixed that, still not working. And then it's finally up, going. Addressed a few issues brought to the town hall, low tree branches, grass and basketball court. We trimmed those up and cut the grass down. I'm working with the project manager, kind of getting a CAD drawing together of what the Father Valley play structure can look like. The site plan evaluation, things of that nature. I gave information out yesterday on specific stuff about that play structure and the park. Once I get that drawing back, I'll reach out to the park board, try and get a meeting together and get a calendar put together to renovate that play structure. Down at the pool, we've had a pretty good season. We are not doing lessons in August because I'm dealing with short staffing. Like Jeff's talking about, everyone's dealing with it. I have one staff member that's already left and went off to college. My other 4 guards are all high school kids that all play sports. Tryouts, practice, everything else started this week. So we can't really schedule a regular week down at the pool. We're kind of just getting by the best we can right now. A little bit shorter hours. But over the season, we had 175 private lessons completed, 79 group lessons completed. We've had 8 private party rentals so far, and we have 3 more scheduled. Issue we had was the pump motor went out, so we had to get that replaced. We thought we had a backup, but there is no backup, so that's something we had to address. The pool's back up and going. The free swim day at Creamery was a big hit. I had my guards keep a tally. We had 103 patrons there for a 4-hour free open swim. They said it was really nice because we are short staffed, so it wasn't like there was 100 people all at once. Kind of families would come swim for a half hour to an hour, then go be part of Creamery. So it was just nice cool off in the day. I think the max we had at any one time was 41 swimmers, easily capable of what my guards were there, so that was good. A few events we've had, 10-year class reunion for 2011 class of Steve I was down at Lewis and Clark Park July 31st. Obviously Creamery last weekend, pickleball tournament. I think they finished it, but that rain came on pretty strong on Sunday, so I don't know if they made it all the way through or not. And then just a few other points. We had 14 pavilion rentals since our last council meeting, and we have 4 scheduled for late August and 2 in the middle of September. Working on trimming the trees back on the bike path, cut all the new starts off. We have to address a few limbs overhanging the path yet. Today, Public Works and I went out and we did concrete around the Blue and Gold Star Monument at Veterans Park to kind of finish up that little last piece of the renovation that needed to get done. We had our staff meeting and Jeff brought up September 11th was right around the corner, so we were trying to make sure we had that park looking good for that. And then Burnt Fork Vet Clinic donated 2 dog waste stands that we put in on the bike path. We've noticed some issues with dog waste on or around the bike path out there, and they didn't really have any resources to take care of that. So we're installing 2 out there, posts are in, signs will go up tomorrow. Any questions?
Questions? Great. Thank you, Bob. Police Department, Chief Sosa.
I'd like to first start off with Creamery. From our standpoint, it was a huge success for an event that had 2 parades, 2 different stages with bands, several blocks apart, with 0 arrests. That's a credit to the department, to the employees of the town, all of the volunteers and the citizens. That's unheard of with an event that size. So that's a credit to everyone. As far as the stats, I changed them up a little bit more. What you see before you is month-to-month comparisons along with comparisons to the previous year. We had a slight increase in assaults, criminal mischiefs, and traffic accidents from comparing ourselves this month to last month and this year to last year. But overall statistically, we had a significant drop when we're comparing ourselves to last year's numbers. What I can tell you additionally is administratively, we've had our work cut out for us. What I found is that several reports were mislabeled. So walking in, I believed that the issue with sex crimes was significantly more than what it actually is. After reviewing the reports and correcting the titles, I found that the numbers are significantly lower. So that's great news. Additionally, we continue to provide training for our officers so we can provide the best services that we can to the community. Any questions?
Okay, thanks, Chief. And last, Mr. Cruz for Public Works. You're the last report, sir. Make it a good one.
Good evening. July was busy, really busy. And I'm extremely proud of the Public Works crew for stepping up every single day and being extremely productive. We needed to. Just the highlights, you have my report in your packet. July was about water. Water use is substantially up. A lot of water, a lot of people irrigating. And the other side of the water issue or topic is we lost ditch water at Riverside. Probably mid-month, I think. We lost it for 10 days. And so we spent those 10 days reestablishing the ditch from the Union down toward Pump House. We rebuilt the pump. We fixed the head gate and reestablished flow, and we were back to 4 irrigation lines, which is amazing. It was kind of spooky. That's kind of the high points for me. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions? Okay.
Do you have any,
Go ahead, Ms. Wander.
do you have any plans for pickup garbage and things that the people in the community are concerned about branches and things left on the street? Do you have any plans for removal?
We're gonna have a fall cleanup, the same as the spring cleanup. And that was, folks could bring debris to the park, and we took care of it. And those folks that needed assistance, there were resources available, and town hall helped line them up. Are there specific requests?
There have been people talking about, down on Church Street, there's a lot of branches, and up on Cottage Street, there's a lot of branches out by the road.
I think people are just wanting to know if that's going to happen in the fall, if it's been outlined as to when and what it's going to look like.
It is going to happen. It will look the same as in the spring, and I don't have a date on that. This will be my first fall cleanup.
Yeah, I think generally that's happened in October is when that's happened. We usually have it open for a month. And I think October is the month that typically happens. So if there are specific concerns from citizens, just direct them to the office and we'll make note of any piles someplace and get those addressed with the property owners. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Okay, barring any business between administrative reports and new business, we'll move right into it. New business item A is discussion decision to nominate and elect a council member to serve as council president in accordance with the town council rules. At a previous meeting, you were, I think, down a member. And so you appointed Mr. Ludington to serve in an interim role as council president. And then once you had a full council, you asked that you reconsider this item to appoint a permanent council president. This is your opportunity to do so.
I nominate Paul Ludington to continue in that role.
I'll second that nomination.
Okay, it's been nominated by Ms. Devlin and seconded by Ms. Allen to nominate Paul Ludington to the council presidency. Council discussion? Public comment. All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Ms. Bertha.
Councilmember Allen. Aye. Councilmember Devlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington.
Abstain.
And Councilmember Wandler.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 3 with 1 abstention. Thank you. We don't have to change signature cards again. The next is new business item B, discussion decision, appointment of councilperson to serve on the planning and zoning board. Currently, Councilmember Ludington serves on that board. To be clear, these appointments go through the end of the year. The reason we're doing these now is because you have a new council. Is Devlin?
I just like to appoint Paul. I was just staring at him to make sure he wasn't gonna like throw a fork at me.
I don't think he has any forks.
You never know.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Devlin and seconded by Ms. Wandler to appoint Councilmember Ludington to the Planning and Zoning Board. Council discussion, public comment. Call for the vote, Ms. Berthoud.
Councilmember Allen. Aye. Councilmember Devlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington.
Aye.
Councilmember Wandler.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next up is appointment of a council member to serve on the TIF-TED board. I think right now Ms. Devlin serves on that board.
What? I nominate Jamie Devlin for TIF board.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been nominated and by Mr. Ludington, seconded by Ms. Wandler to appoint Jamie Devlin to the TIF-TED board. Council discussion.
Can we talk about what that board does? It's less clear than the others, so I think it would just be
The
worth
TIF
a couple moments.
Sure, absolutely. And it's a great question. In fact, we welcome membership to this board because it's kind of been a limbo board that has not been extremely active, and it is something we have to do. The TIF-TED board advises the administration and town council on initiatives that can utilize tax increment finance money. We have 2 tax increment districts. One is the North Stevensville Tax Increment Finance District, which encompasses our North Industrial Zone. And then we have a Targeted Economic Development District at the airport. Both are tax increments. It captures funding from improvements on those properties through taxes, directs those to the town, and then we are able to make improvements in those districts for in terms of infrastructure and that sort of thing. So water improvements, road improvements. So the TIF-TED board should meet quarterly to advise the administration and council on how to allocate those funds.
A good example of that, correct me if I'm wrong, is what they're doing around the mall.
Correct.
That whole area.
A lot of tax increment finance money is being invested into the mall, as well as South Crossing was another area in Missoula. Missoula uses a lot of tax increment finance money. And MRA's board kind of helps govern a lot of that. So South Crossing, Southgate Mall are both examples, as well as a lot of the development with the old Mercantile building, as well as a building adjacent to that, where you see those, they've been able to finance those projects with a return back to the city. So they loan the money to the organization to build the project at a more competitive price than maybe a traditional bank could. And the city gets the return to reinvest that money back into the district. So our districts are still developing, so there's really not a whole lot of money being dealt with there. Right now in the TED district, all of that money is being used to pay debt service for the runway expansion. Does that answer your question? Cool. All right, any further comments from council? Public comment on the appointment? Ms. Bertha.
Councilmember Allen. Aye. Councilmember Devlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington.
Aye.
Councilmember Wandler.
Aye.
Okay, next up is new business item D, discussion decision on the appointment of council person to serve on the park board.
You're currently the president of the park board. Yeah. I nominate Sydney.
There's a second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been nominated by Ms. Devlin and seconded by Ms. Wandler to appoint Councilmember Allen to the park board. Council discussion. Public comment. All right, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Berthoud?
Councilmember Allen.
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington.
Aye.
And Councilmember Wandler.
Okay, next item is item E, discussion decision, appointment of councilperson to serve on the airport board.
How about Karen?
I'm only gonna be here 5 more months.
We have
That'll
to
be-
leave, so.
That'll be 5 months. You'll be baptized into the airport.
That's good. Just don't put me on the helicopter.
I'll nominate Karen Walker.
Noted.
I'll second that nomination.
Okay, it's been nominated by Mr. Ludington and seconded by Ms. Allen to appoint Karen Wandler to serve on the airport board for 5 months. No helicopters. Council discussion? Public comment? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Ms. Berthoud?
Fast, I can't type so fast. Councilmember Allen.
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington.
Aye.
Councilmember Wandler.
All right, motion passes 3 with 1 abstention. Next up is discussion decision on the appointment of a councilperson to serve on the Climate Action Advisory Ad Hoc Board, which has no membership. We've not received any applications for that board. But with the right council member, maybe we could recruit some. So I think Ms. Allen has someone in mind.
Can I nominate myself?
I won't stop you.
I will nominate myself to serve on the Climate Action Ad Board.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved or nominated by Ms. Allen and seconded by Mr. Ludington to nominate Ms. Allen to the Climate Action Advisory Board. Council discussion. Public comment. All right, we'll call for the vote. Ms. Berthoud?
Councilmember Allen.
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington.
Aye.
Councilmember Wandler.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes unanimously. All right, we'll move into new business item G, discussion decision on the declaration of emergency termination. Item brought forward by citizen Jim Cruz. Mr. Cruz, you want to step to the podium? You can go ahead and present the item to council.
This is a multi-part agenda item, so how would the council like me to proceed, Mayor? I can address each item individually, or I can address it as a whole.
I don't know as though I'm qualified to speak to how you presented the item. I mean, you brought it forward, so it's your item
Why
to.
don't I do it one item at a time?
Yes, please.
Pat, all the council doesn't have a computer so that you can pull up all the documents. You have the copy of the emergency declaration and the temporary emergency ordinance 166 before you. The mayor of the town of Stevensville has declared a local disaster emergency. Reference the proclamation dated 3/31/2020. Mayor of the town of Stevensville declared a state and local disaster emergency on the 31st day of March 2020 and made the declaration retroactive to the 12th of March 2020. This could be by itself a legal issue regardless of the actions of the state of Montana, because it's a retroactive declaration. In the declaration, item 4, page 2 of the declaration, the mayor committed to implement all directives provided by the governor of the state of Montana. As the governor has lifted the state of emergency for the state of Montana effective June 30th, 2021, it seems to me that the mayor should have complied and immediately lifted the town declaration of local disaster emergency. I'm confused by the declaration, as the governors of the state of Montana did not declare a disaster, but declared a state of emergency. And the president of the United States did not declare a disaster, but declared a state of emergency. The mayor declared a disaster emergency, which does not exist under Montana law. Only a declaration of emergency or disaster, not disaster emergency. I don't know what that means. Item 1 of this agenda request, the mayor should issue an order immediately to terminate the declared disaster emergency as non-exists. As it is the mayor that makes the determination that a disaster or emergency exists in the town, The council cannot direct the mayor to determine or to terminate the declaration. However, emergency ordinance 166 expired on June 17, 2020, and was not reviewed by either the executive branch or the legislative branch. Thus, the ordinance is a dead ordinance. Emergency ordinances are only effective for 90 days. That ordinance is gone. By the mayor's declaration of disaster emergency, the mayor under item 5, the mayor assumed powers the mayor does not appear to have under the Montana Code. Although the mayor may declare an emergency or disaster, the mayor may not assume any powers that are not assigned to him via the state legislature, nor any power not assigned to him via the existing plan of government for the town of Stevensville. I presume council is familiar with the structural sub-options for the government of the town of Stevensville. If you're not, I'll give you a real quick rundown. Title 7, Chapter 3, subsection 201, 202, subsection 1, 203, 212, subsection 2, 213, subsection 3, 214, subsection 2, 215, subsection 2, 216, subsection 2, 217, subsection 2, 218, subsection 2, 219, subsection 1, 220, subsection 1, 221, subsection 3, 222, subsection 2, 223, subsection 2, in accordance with 73113. This is the form of government that was voted by the citizens of the town of Stevensville. This is supposed to be on file with the clerk. The clerk should have a copy, and you all should have read these so that you know what your powers and duties are. And there are certain things that you can do and you can't do. So we'll get into those if you need a little further guidance on that. I've got that right here. I'll be happy to dig in. The mayor may have assumed powers not assigned to him by the state legislature, and that he assumed the power to authorize an employee to work from home. This power is assigned to the town council as a town via Montana Code 754101. Thus, the mayor may have violated the constitutional rights of every citizen of the town of Stevensville by depriving each citizen of the form of government authorized by the citizens of this town. Powers of the municipal council, 754101. General powers of municipal council. The city or town council has the power to make and pass all bylaws, ordinances, orders, very important that word, orders, and resolutions not repugnant to the Constitution of the United States or the state of Montana, or to the provisions of this title necessary for the government or management of the affairs of the city or town, for the execution of powers vested in the body corporate, and for carrying into effect the provisions of this title. This is not a power of the mayor. This is council power.
Can you read that one more time, please?
Absolutely. Montana Code 7-5-4101. General powers of municipal council. The city or town council has power to make and pass all bylaws, ordinances, orders, and resolutions not repugnant to the Constitution of the United States or to the state of Montana, or to the provisions of this title necessary for the government or management of the affairs of the city or town, for the execution of the powers vested in the body corporate, and for carrying into effect the provisions of this title. This is not a power of the mayor. 754102, powers and duties of mayor related to administration and executive function. The mayor may communicate to the council at the beginning of each session, and more often if considered necessary, a statement of the affairs of the city or town with recommendations that the mayor considers proper. Recommend to the council measures connected with the public health, cleanliness, and ornament of the city or town, and improvement of government and finances that the mayor considers expedient. Call special meetings of the council. Costs to be presented once in 3 months, a full statement of the financial condition of the city or town. Bid for the city or town any property sold at a tax or judicial sale whenever the city or town is an interested party. Procure and have in the mayor's custody the seal of the city or town. Take and administer oaths. Perform other duties that may be prescribed by law or by resolution or ordinance of the council. Remember that, resolution, ordinance, or ordinance of the council. The mayor, it's not a power, it's a duty. Not a power, it's a duty. The mayor is the presiding officer of the council and shall sign the journals of the council and all warrants of the city treasury and decide all ties by vote. The mayor has another vote. That, right there, that statement is one of the statements that makes the mayor of Stevensville a weak mayor. The mayor has only one vote to break a tie, no other votes. Nor is it authorized under the powers of the mayor related to municipal officers, personnel, and citizens, 7.4.44 or 4303. Powers of mayor related to municipal officers, personnel, and citizens. The mayor has the power to nominate and with the consent of the council, appoint all non-elected officers in the city or town provided by the council, except as provided in this title. Suspend and with the consent of the council, remove any non-elected officer stating in the suspension or removal the cause for removal. Supervise the discharge of official duty by all subordinate officers. Require any of the officers of a city or town to exhibit of the officer's books and papers. Request that the governor call out the militia to aid the mayor in suppressing riots or other disorderly conduct, preventing and extinguishing fires, securing the peace and safety of the city or town, or carrying into effect any law or ordinance. As I recollect, I never saw an order from the town council directing or authorize employees to work from home. If one exists, please produce the resolution. I have a suggested motion for this action. I move that we, the body of this town council, hereby request the mayor to rescind the town of Stevensville disaster emergency declaration immediately, restore the town of Stevensville to its constitutional form of government, and resume normal meeting schedules and locations. That's for part one. Would you like me to move to part two, or you want to deal with part one first?
Can we digest that, please?
Okay.
Mind?
Absolutely.
That's a lot. Yeah.
What's it?
That's a lot.
It's a little bit, I agree.
So I guess I can ask a question, I can engage in dialogue.
Of course.
Okay. I'm looking at item 1. The suggested motion is that we request the mayor to rescind the town of Stevensville disaster to its constitutional form of government, resume normal meeting schedules and locations. That's assuming that we're no longer in a state of emergency.
That's right.
I just listened to the chief of fire tell me that there's ambulance shifts that are not filled because of COVID beds. I just got an email saying that I will be masking with my 3rd grade students when we come back. So this would assume that we're not still in a state of emergency. I feel like this is opinionated and does not reflect how the community of Stevensville is feeling. The entirety of it, I understand that many community members do feel like we have surpassed the state of emergency. But what I just heard from the fire chief, it feels like I am stepping on somebody else's toes making this decision. There's a reason that the council did not call state of emergency, a mayor did. That is part of his, I understand that I have the power,
That's the executive branch. That's a governor, that's a president. And this is assuming that we are no longer in a state of emergency, and I can't sit here and say that.
June 30th, 2021, Governor Gina Forte terminated the emergency for the state of Montana.
Ms. Devlin?
Regarding COVID-19. If there is another emergency out there, a new declaration of emergency must be made. This is regarding the COVID-19 emergency.
Ms. Devlin?
And I think that's to play the devil's advocate. That's the question. I don't want to speak for you, but I want to understand this is where you're going with this. The state of emergency has been canceled by the first powers that be that put it into place. So the question would be, why are we still under a state of emergency if our governor has said we no longer are under a state of emergency? We're not following suit by what was originated to cause us to follow that suit. Am I paraphrasing that? Is that your?
That's correct. Part of this declaration of the state of emergency, or in this case, mayor's terms, declaration of disaster emergency, he assumed a lot of powers in that declaration of emergency, which are not authorized to the mayor. Okay, the mayor cannot sign a contract without council consent. The mayor can't change the budget without council consent. The mayor cannot change job duties for employees without council consent. That's your job. You can't change the salary. That's your job. The mayor is the supervisor of the town, and he implements the directives the council issues. This declaration of disaster emergency, he has assumed a lot of powers that are reserved to the council, and the council did not sign this declaration of emergency or declaration of disaster emergency. He didn't do this by resolution. He didn't do it by emergency ordinance. Even if he did by emergency ordinance, the emergency ordinance expired 90 days after you put it in place. So at that point, you either had to go back and revisit that emergency ordinance and reinstitute it, which didn't happen. And this disaster emergency, you can't assign powers from the council to the mayor that are not issued to the mayor by the legislature. Your duties and obligations are the same, and so are his. And so what? So there's an emergency. Does that stop a council meeting from happening? No, it still happens. It has to happen because you can't suspend the government. That would take like declaration of martial law by the President of the United States, I believe. So what I'm asking here is I'm asking you to ask the mayor to terminate his declaration of disaster emergency, and you should pick up your powers and authority that are legally and rightfully yours and start doing your job as a councilman. That's what I'm asking, and that's what the citizens of this town, I think, are asking too. This meeting right here, why is it here? Why is it not over at town hall where it belongs? That's what your council rules say. Council holds meetings at town hall, not at North Valley Public Library. You understand your council rules? Council rules are orders directed from the council to everybody in town, all the employees and the executive staff. The mayor is simply the administrator of the meeting. He doesn't control everything that goes on in the meeting. He runs it in accordance with Robert's Rules of Orders, for example. Ms. Devlin, when you need to speak, okay, and I'm violating council rules right now, okay? I guess I'm doing it kind of with consent because the way council rules work, I should be directing all my comments to the mayor. And if you want to speak, you have to get recognition from the mayor in order to speak. And then you don't speak to me, you speak to the mayor. These meetings have been going on almost unregulated for 2 or 3 years now, and they're a disaster. You have to have some order. And the only way you're going to get order back is if you take control of what's going on like you're supposed to. And enforce your own rules and enforce your own laws. You have to do that. This is what makes the people's government work. This is what protects the people. You sat there last council meeting and you said, why am I approving claims from 7 months ago? You shouldn't have done it. Those claims should have been brought before you, before the money was spent. You don't spend money and then go get permission. If the mayor wants to spend $100,000 on a computer, he presents 3 quotes to the council. And we say, well, okay, we have these 3 quotes here. We're going with this one here for this reason. Can we have permission to spend this money? That's your job. It's not his job to spend the money. It's your job to approve the spending of that money. All these other little contracts and agreements that have been signed, guess what? They all come back on you because you're responsible for the money. Every single one of you here under Montana law can be held accountable for all these expenditures. So you have to get control as a council of what's going on and get this business of the people back on track. That's all I'm trying to do. This disaster emergency, you have it in front of you where it says he doesn't have to go through the purchasing policy, he can sign contracts and all that sort of stuff. That's your job. That's your job to say yes or no. That's how you protect everybody here, all of us, our investments in this community. That's what you have to do. And if you don't, this town's going to end up bankrupt. Did that clarify a little bit? I'm not an old grouchy guy. I'm a rules and procedures guy. I wrote, see this hat? I wrote nuclear submarines. If you don't do your job right, you kill everybody on the submarine. Okay? All it takes is one guy not doing his job. And you flood a submarine and you kill everybody on board and you affect every family and every child in that community and the whole submarine service. Well, I kind of look at running this town the same way. Miss Devlin, you had a nice house over there up where you were at, and you made some money on it. I know you did. I got a pretty good house over where I live. I live right next door to Chief Motley, and that's a life investment for us. And if we don't run this town properly, we're gonna all lose everything. That's why it's so important that you take control of this action and start enforcing your rules and enforcing the laws for the town of Montana, or for the town of Stevensville. And that's all I've ever been after.
I guess I struggle with flexibility. We're arguing over where to hold a meeting. Flexibility is one of my core values. When things go awry, we change them to make it work. And this is a very appropriate place to have a meeting during the pandemic.
With all due respect, and I apologize for cutting you off. If you want to change a meeting place, you need to suspend council rules to move the meeting, and you do it in advance, or you change the council rules. Those resolutions are just as effective as laws. They are law. Council makes those rules. You just can't just close your eyes and say, okay, we're going to hold a meeting over here this week. Can't do it. You have to suspend the rule to move the meeting, or you change the resolution and the rules to move the meeting. It's kind of like this. Stop sign down the road. I'm going to run the stop sign today. I'll get council to say it's okay next week. Is that right? No, it's not. Because the law is there to say that stop sign is there for a reason, to keep people from getting hurt. Okay? Well, these rules that you have are in place to protect the town and the citizens of the town. And it's okay to be flexible, but there is a right way and a wrong way to do it.
Ms. Devlin.
Why would we want to still be running our government, and I guess I'm gonna ask you this question.
Sure.
Under a state of emergency?
The town is still actively responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. One example is that we're still having challenges getting into some residents to change water meters because of COVID-19 concerns, especially with the increase of cases in the community. That's just one example. We do have some concerns with staff exposure still that we're trying to be flexible with and still respect certain beliefs and wishes and opinions because it's become somewhat of a hot potato. And we're also closely monitoring the situation because we are seeing an uptick. I guess while the state of Montana and the governor respectively have decided that the emergency does not exist across the state, that doesn't mean an emergency doesn't exist locally. And I mean, when you pull the declaration up, it says item 1, a state of local emergency pursuant to section 10.3.402. It is a state of local emergency. It's very clear. The trigger for why the state of emergency was declared was less about COVID and actually more about funding. FEMA requires this declaration, nearly verbatim, to ensure that the town is eligible for that FEMA funding. Aside from the other responses that we're still engaged in with COVID-19, if a funding opportunity came available where the town could take advantage of funds to respond to the pandemic further, then we'd like to have that flexibility to immediately do so, rather than waiting 2 weeks for a council meeting to say, is it okay if we seek this money from another source to help the community and ensure the health and safety and their well-being? And that's why these things exist. Yes, I have no problem with rules standing the test of time, but some rules are impractical when you're trying to respond to an emergency. The meeting situation, when you go back to when this emergency was declared, frankly, our government did kind of grind to a halt in terms of the legislative branch because we had council members who were adamantly opposed to attending a meeting virtually, and I had staff members who wouldn't attend a council meeting in person because of safety concerns. And we needed flexibility. And so even with the flexibility, we still had obstruction to actually participate. We finally came around once we found a space that was suitable and could fulfill the needs of the community. And even with the crowd we have this evening, we'd have a hard time fitting in City Hall tonight. I mean, there's just not enough seating in that room to adequately distance people who wish to be distanced. And accommodate all of the things we need to accommodate with live streaming and Zoom service and communications and all of those other things. It's just, we're still seeing an increase or high attendance in live streaming. And we had live streaming before the pandemic, but it's more of a robust system today than it was before the pandemic. So a lot has changed and we're still adjusting and we're still, if for whatever reason, I don't know, but if for some reason Delta variant of COVID-19 got really bad and we went back into shutdown mode, we'd be doing this we'd be putting this exact declaration back into place. I didn't write this declaration. I took out City A and put in Stevensville. This was provided by the Montana League of Cities and Towns, whose general counsel reviewed it. The town's city attorney reviewed it and found no issue with it whatsoever. So I understand codes and normal procedures, those things work. But when we're trying to adapt and respond to something that most of us have not lived through for a very long time in a pandemic, we need the flexibility. We need to be innovative. We can't, and I frankly, this isn't giving me full will to just ignore the purchasing policy. It says in response to the emergency. So I'm not just buying crackers for everybody because it's fun and I can do it because the purchasing policy is suspended. We are making purchases to respond to the pandemic. And some dollar figures were thrown out regarding computer equipment, and all of the expenditures related to the computers were entirely covered by funding available by other agencies because we had these things in place and we could quickly respond to them. We could quickly put things into place and we could take advantage of it and we could respond accordingly. We had a pandemic to deal with. We needed to separate officers out of a communal office and try to distance our staff members. We had outbreaks running through the office and it made things very difficult. And so we purchased the equipment so that we could keep the town running. We could keep people safe. We could keep everything going. We could make sure the water flowed because we were one outbreak away from not having a sewer or water operator. And when that person doesn't show up to work, people get very upset with us. Your toilets don't work.
What about the expiration in June?
For the ordinance or the?
For the ordinance.
So I think the emergency ordinance was council action, and that was done before the emergency declaration. We waited as long as we could to declare a state of local emergency until FEMA really just kind of forced our hand on it and said, if you want to be eligible for CARES funding and FEMA funding, you need to have this in place. Because it was quickly evolving into a political issue. And I was facing a lot of scrutiny. In fact, the day I did it, I faced scrutiny because we declared an emergency over this. And I faced scrutiny back when we had snow and I didn't declare an emergency. It's damned if I do and if I don't. The ordinance, I think, serves a different purpose than what the declaration did. The ordinance, I think, put a lot of different things more immediately into play. There was a lot of conversation around that. I think you were on council when that was adopted. And that was legislative action, and the legislature of Montana has given you the authority to adopt such ordinances, just as they have given me the authority through 10.3.402 to declare a local emergency and terminate that emergency when I see that it's fit for my community.
Okay, a couple of.
I want to make a comment real quick. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, this declaration of disaster emergency was prepared, as you say, on models from other cities. Those other cities were most likely strong mayoral governments. Town of Stevensville is not. A local emergency or disaster has to be declared in accordance with our form of government. Not strong mayoral, it is a weak mayoral. And that means that our other laws still are in effect. Nothing that I can find in Title 10 for declaration of emergencies gives a mayor the authority to supersede anything in the state legislature or any town law or ordinance. And that's exactly what is here. The mayor is authorized to enter into agreements and contracts and make purchases and expenditures without adhering to state and local procurement requirements, including those in Title 7 and 18 Montana Code annotated in the town purchasing law. You can't find anything that says that the mayor can assume that power on his own. If you can show it to me, I'll be happy to admit it. I couldn't find it. I spent a lot of time researching this.
Out of 129 municipalities, 114 have the same form of government that we do.
But are they strong or weak?
They're the same form of government.
So, sorry, say that again?
There's 129 municipalities in Montana. 114 have the same government we do and use the same declaration.
Do we know how many are currently using it?
I don't know.
Okay, I have a question. Oh, no, you had questions.
Mr. Luddy.
You keep referring to the town of Stevensville disaster emergency declaration. I haven't been able to find that. I've been able to find 166.
If you go to the town website, look under resources.
Yeah.
Look under news. That's where it's at. And it states right here, Town of Stevensville, Montana, Office of the Mayor, declaration of a state of local disaster emergency. I'll be happy to pass this over if you'd like to look at it.
Certainly.
Can I ask the question when you're waiting? Okay. As I've shared with you and you're well aware, and everybody here probably is well aware, there sometimes is some gray area and it can get a little fuzzy. So can we clarify something really quick before my brain goes down this rabbit hole? So you're saying that we can ask to have this done. And you're saying that we don't have the power to have this done. Are we talking about the same thing? I'm sorry, but I'm getting two different.
You can ask.
Requests, but you don't have to agree.
Correct. State law is very specific that the termination is when the principal executive determines the emergency no longer exists.
If I may, that's why I suggested, I move that we, the body of this town council, hereby request the mayor.
The request, yeah. And
But
that's
you
what
can't
was
tell.
throwing me off. Yeah, I got you. Thank you.
And just to go back, Jamie, to the question you asked on ordinance 166, and we kind of led into the difference. And I indicated 166 put some more immediate measures into play that we wouldn't have had the authority to do even with the declaration. So things like the council suspended late fees on water accounts.
Right.
We wouldn't have done that under the declaration. We wouldn't have that ability. And when the emergency declaration, or excuse me, the ordinance 166 did expire, we came back to council and said, would you please renew the waiver of late fees in order to do that? You approved emergency leave for employees that couldn't work because they were sick. You know, the emergency declaration gave us the ability to send people home and work from home. But if they were sick, we didn't have emergency leave for them to use outside of their regular sick leave, which a lot of our employees didn't have because they're so new. It authorized us to pay claims out of cycle for a period of time because there were immediate meetings that you went ahead and suspended until we could get a lay of the land and figure out exactly what this looked like. And then the declaration came into place and we had a path forward.
I mean, since we're talking, I personally, well, not me personally, this has been a topic that has been on the table of our community for about 6 weeks, I guess, if not a little bit longer, about when can we have our meetings back at town hall, like when everybody's screaming for things to get back to normal, right? For the sake of the people that want that, I would like to see it go back to how it was and be able to put into place a policy if needed. Which personally goes against a lot of my personal views, but I wasn't elected for my personal views. A lot of people want this done for many, many, many reasons. And if we're doing it for money, for funding, what's the alternative? How else do we have to be under a declaration of emergency to get that funding? Or can we have special meetings and?
With FEMA, yes, you need to have the declaration.
I guess I'll jump in with a question. So my concern is, and I think that we could redeclare a state of emergency. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. If we felt like the Delta variant, okay, because that is my concern. I think we are getting to a point where things can start to move back to normal, but I don't know if I could say that same statement in 2 weeks. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So I would want to know.
Here's the thing, you guys, if we really are hell-bent on having our meetings back in the closet at City Hall, just ask. I mean, the declaration doesn't prohibit us from holding them wherever we want to. I mean, the declaration is really an administrative mechanism to make sure that we can adequately respond and quickly respond to the emergency when it's warranted. But when it comes to holding a meeting at town hall versus at the library, fine. All I need is the council to say, look, we would, as a collective body, we would really like to start holding our meetings back at town hall. Conveniently, this space was available for us because of the distancing But prior to the pandemic even starting, the administration was considering proposing this space anyway for meetings because there wasn't enough room at town hall for the people that show up to the meetings. There just wasn't enough space. You know, we're capped out at like 12 chairs. And so if any faction of the community shows up in mass, we're looking at immediately moving the meeting for any controversial subject, which we seem to carry a lot of those.
I think that the space is it's the physical piece that people can have ownership of.
Sure.
And so I think that's what, it's easy to say that, but I think there's a lot behind that. I mean, or it wouldn't be the meeting space. Do you know what I mean? People aren't just gonna say we want to be in the meeting space. And I know I've had conversations with people. The meeting space is where we start and then we go back because they don't have control over this, but they do have control in a say in where they sit. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So I think it's more than that is what I'm saying. I don't think it's as simple as just saying, let's move our meetings back.
I guess my point is if it's an issue of where the meetings are and getting back to normal, I think we can get back to normal without rescinding an emergency, so that if we have to take baby steps back to where we were, we do that instead of prematurely pulling. I would rather be at normal and rescind the emergency than be working towards normal and rescind the emergency. That is how I would determine to lead the community. Is I'd rather I'll use a firefighting reference. I'd rather put the fire out before I turn the water off than start turning the water off before the fire and then have the fire flare up because the water was off too early. I mean, you're not hurting anything leaving this in place. If you want to legislatively put a COVID response or COVID recovery plan into place and say, this is how we expect the administration to act in getting us back to normal. And then when you get to that goal and we are back to normal, we rescind the emergency. I have no objection to that whatsoever.
I think that hard part of that is what we saw at the last council meeting when we saw those claims that were paid out of cycle. That's the hard pill to swallow with us. Were you in agreement with that?
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's really upsetting to people and why, I mean, that's what I'm saying, when that's not the piece that they can touch. They just see it after the fact. Where we have our meetings is the place they can touch. So that coming out our last meeting speaks to a lot of this. It's the little pieces that are easy to have an answer to, but it's the bigger picture that we're having to answer to that is probably fueling this request.
Sure. And so as stewards of the government, I would just respectfully ask that you try to separate those issues. And the fact that the substantial claim came back before you 7 months after the fact is more of an administrative failure on staff parts than it is in response to the emergency. I mean, the emergency response is what prompted the purchase in the first place. The delay in getting it to council had nothing to do with the emergency. It had everything to do with we failed to bring it back to you and acknowledge that. So I think, you know, under normal circumstances, if we had brought the claim back in January, that entire set of claims back in January when it was scheduled to come back, the conversation would be entirely different.
I'm not denying that. I'm just saying there's that feels.
Sure, and I think that's why you're in the positions you're in is so that you can analyze, separate those issues, and treat them respectively.
Is there anything that you want to add?
There's no motion on the floor.
No, I just in what you're saying here.
You know, you hit the nail on the head. Okay, but the claims coming back after 7 months, that is a sore spot in the community. Okay, you look around there, there's not that many people here tonight. It's the same old back row people. Okay, we're still here. We're still slugging it out, trying to get things to run the way it's supposed to. And sometimes we're a little more abrupt than we probably should be. Okay, my nickname was 60 Grit. I don't know if you know what 60 grit sandpaper is, but it's pretty abrasive, and, well, I'm sorry, that's me, okay? I'm not gonna hide it, I'm 60 grit. The problem is, a lot of people, they don't wanna come to council meetings anymore. I remember our council meetings were sometimes packed because people were very interested in what was going on. But people respond to the way that they're treated and the way they feel. So if they don't feel welcome, they don't come. If they feel like they're not gonna be heard, they don't wanna say anything. There's a lot of people out there who want to be heard, who need to be heard, and they need to see some positive reinforcement coming from the council to let them know that you're looking out for their interests. And the declaration of emergency, you know, these things come and go. If you wanna implement a COVID recovery plan, fine, terminate the emergency and implement a COVID recovery plan. But make sure that you do it in accordance with the laws of the town, the resolutions of the town, and with the state. We're giving blanket permission as in item 8 here. This is what people are looking at. The mayor is authorized to enter into agreements and contracts and make purchases and expenditures without adhering to local procurement requirements, including those in Title 7 and 18 of Montana Code and the town's purchasing policy. Well, if you look at this declaration, I don't see a council signature on there anywhere. And I don't ever remember this coming up for a vote before the council.
Mr. Cruz, do you want to finish that paragraph?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
The second paragraph of this, or the second sentence of this says, this authorization is limited only to agreements, contract purchases, and expenditures reasonably necessary to implement the declaration, and no other agreements, contract purchases, or expenditures. That's an irrelevant sentence, in my opinion, because the first sentence says, hey, I'm the boss, and I can do this without your permission. And that's exactly the way people are looking at it. You approve all purchases. And you're supposed to do them beforehand, not after the money's been spent. You know, yeah, you get a budget, right? Okay, you get a budget, you set up a budget. I don't remember seeing a budget amendment for any of these COVID money coming out. Have you seen a budget amendment for any of this COVID money coming into the town? I haven't. And I haven't seen anywhere it says we're gonna spend this COVID money on something. I haven't seen that either. So what's the deal? We're just taking money from the government, which, by the way, belongs to all of us. That money just doesn't come out of thin air. That's your and my tax money. And it's being given to the town, and the people of the town expect it to be spent properly. And that means that you account for the money coming in, you budget what you're going to spend it for, you get approval to spend it, and account for that expenditure to the public. Isn't that the way it's supposed to work? I don't know of any finance officer for a town that doesn't understand that. You just can't spend money, even though it's coming into the town. Hey, look, we got $100,000, let's go spend it. No, that's our money. Not the town's money, it's our money. You need to budget it and account for it. Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4 of this are directly in line with Part 1. Okay, these are things that you should probably do as a council if you request the mayor to terminate the emergency. And if he does terminate the emergency, these are things that should be done or something similar to that. I would highly recommend whether you approve this Part 1 of this agenda item to go forward to the mayor, I'd still recommend that you look at all these other parts and make a decision, because ultimately somebody's going to be held accountable for this stuff. You need to have a paper trail. Without a paper trail, we got problems. And I think that with your approval, I think if you have no more questions for me, I think I'll sit down. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your indulgence. And this is not a reflection, it should not be a reflection on the way Mayor Dewey did anything. It is the way that we, the town feel. Okay, it's not picking on the mayor. Never was. It's about this. Thank you.
Would council like to throw a motion on the floor or let the discussion be reflected on the record and move on?
I'm not really sure how to proceed here, so I'm just gonna kind of say a few things. I think primarily what we're, in my opinion, I can't really disagree with anything that Mr. Cruz has said. I realize that there may be some serious concerns among the citizens about the financial status of the town. I personally have a lot more concern about the financial status of the country than I do of the town. We have only control over our budget. It's the only control we have. We don't have control over how much money we get. We don't have any control over who says how much money we get. We don't have any control over how many mills we have or how much those mills are worth. That's all told to us. All we have control over is what they say we have and how we can relegate that or delegate that in a budget. When I look at the claims, what I want to see is to make sure that they're not outside of their budgetary allotment. I think that the departments within a small town like Stevensville need to be able to have some authority to say, I have X number of dollars in my budget. I'm going to spend them on these kind of things. Doesn't always happen, happens mostly with police departments and administration, not so much with public works and the fire department as different things happen. Public works has to kind of respond to things that are kind of out of the ordinary, and sometimes they might have to buy a really expensive valve that they didn't budget for. Or maybe they did put some money in their budget for something like that to happen. It doesn't mean that we can't buy that valve and install it before the bill is paid. That's how you stay in good credit standing with your vendors. If they're outside of their budget, I want to know about it, I want to know about why. Every single time. And like I said at the last public meeting, I will, as long as I'm on this council, I will never allow us to pay claims out of cycle again, ever, period. I don't care if we're in a state of emergency or not. Somebody needs to be able to say, I saw this, I want to make sure that somebody else knows in the citizenry what it was and that money was paid out. It's unacceptable to me that or that happened again. I continue to be shocked at what was contained in that. Granted, this is unprecedented territory for everybody in this room. We've never been here before, and God help us that we're ever there again. I don't want to be shut up in my house for 6 months and only have to go out and not be able to touch or talk to a lot of the people that I know. I don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. So we need to try to do what we can to respect the wishes of those that are around us. Yeah, I would love to go back to town hall. I think that might be a good idea. I don't think that, I will say this, and I'll say it publicly, I might as well.
I've known Brandon since he was in high school. I don't know of a person in this town who was more dedicated to the town of Stevensville than Brandon is. I'm not sure why people assume that he is out to screw us, because I don't understand that. I have been in towns and been part of towns where there was somebody in charge who didn't like anybody, or specifically the town. When I lived in Minnesota, I lived in a small town there. Nobody could stand the mayor, and the mayor didn't like anybody. And he kind of did whatever he wanted. That's not the case here. If that wasn't the case, we would be in a lot more trouble than I think we are now. To believe that he would do something specifically to harm the town or to put residents in danger is beyond the pale to me. Same with everybody that's sitting up here, and the same with you folks sitting up there. You're concerned about the people in this town, and I don't blame you. I'd be concerned about it too. But we're doing what we can in our small little bits. And you know what? Not everything runs smoothly, but I don't think that we're in a financial risk at this moment. And to me, that's the only detriment that we have right now. We've got a good public works department. We have an unbelievable opportunity with the police chief that we have. So, yeah, the safety and the health of the town is in a pretty good spot right now. We've got water. We went through extremely hot temperatures with as much water as we've had recently. We're really in a disaster. I moved to this town in 1992, and there were water restrictions then. We will always have water restrictions, always. The biggest problem that we had was people got the water as much as they wanted for the same amount of money. We don't get to do that anymore because now we found out how much money is going to waste or how much water is going down the drain. So we're working on that. We now have an opportunity with some of the funds from the recovery to try to fix a bunch of that stuff so that we're in a better position than we were before. If it wasn't for the dedicated individuals within this town, I don't think we would be there. Do we have room to improve? Do we need to do things better? Yep. I won't argue that point at all. But as a bunch of amateurs sitting up here, am I going to make sure that we follow procedures to the letter every single time? I'll do the best I can. That's really all you can ask of these people up here, that they'll do the best they can. I guess that's all I have to say.
I have a question.
Okay.
Could we terminate this? Rewrite a new one? With different, I mean, could we dumb this down? Take some things away, not necessarily add, but.
Sure. I'm not opposed to that. Here's the thing. You can do whatever you want. I mean, you're the ones, yes, there are rules, right? There are sideboards you have to operate within. You're the governing body who sets the laws. So if there's a problem with the rules or the laws, you're the people who fix it. So, I mean, the point has been sent home. We all get it. Don't spend any money and bring the claim back 7 months later. That point's made, it's in stone. We get that. But when we talk about spending money, or just as a point of clarification, we talk about spending money before council gets to approve it. We do that every day, you guys. You guys are approving claims as a formality and as a check and balance to what the executive branch is doing. We've already, I mean, everything in the claims packet is sitting on a charge account or a credit card. And a lot of those goods or services have already been rendered to us, and so I mean, it's done. The deed is done. So I think, I mean, if there are, I don't know. I guess what I would like to see as the executive is that the legislative branch take an interest in how this community comes out of the pandemic, and that you put a plan together that says, here's how we're going to come back from this, and here are the policies in which we're going to do it within. Great. Then this is a moot point. I don't foresee, this is just living in existence. It's like, I'm not going to come into work tomorrow morning and say, well, I'm responding to the pandemic today, so we're going to blow 15 grand. That's not going to happen.
And that's not what I'm.
No, so I guess, yes, I could rescind the emergency and put a new one into place. And there's processes that go within that. We've already wasted enough time, frankly. I think this is an important conversation for our community. I just don't know as though this is the right way to go about it. I would rather hear this conversation around recovery than around what can Brandon do and not do. That's where my interests would lie. I'd rather see, okay, instead of leaving it up to Brandon and City Hall to figure out what we're going to do next, why don't we take some initiative? And I'm not being derogatory towards this board, but why don't we take some initiative and help him out? Because the first 3 or 4 months of this pandemic, I pretty much flew solo with the town. Didn't have a lot of support from the city council. They didn't support me. So now I finally have a group of people who can guide the organization from a policy level to say, here's how we want you to respond to this pandemic today, and we want you to guide our recovery for this community. That's your role, is to help guide that and not leave it up. That's where we all get into trouble at this table, is that it's left up to us and we make a decision and everyone hates us for it, rather than this. Please stop.
It's someone's phone.
Okay, but
Public
we all represent, and I'm not hearing the public comment on a day-to-day basis saying this emergency declaration needs to go or anything like that. People really aren't, as far as we're concerned, they're not concerned about it. We don't hear it at the front counter. We still see people come in with masks on. It's a mix. And I think like all things COVID, no matter what you do, will probably offend the other half of the people. Right? It's going to be half of the population we upset with whatever direction we choose. But rather than bringing this conversation down to a, without lack of a better term, micromanaging, why don't we talk about recovery and how do we get to where this can get rescinded, where I'm comfortable rescinding it? How do we get there? And I think you guys are key. We'll call for public comment when we're ready to call for public comment, Ms. Rodabaugh. You know the routine. You've been to enough meetings. But you're that body that hears from your constituents and can guide the recovery so that we know what to do. We can open the book and say, okay, council wanted this. This is their initiative. Let's implement that. How do we implement that? Let's do it. That's our role. We've just been left up recently to write the book and then implement it. We'd rather not write the book. That's your job.
One more
So,
question.
okay.
I'm sorry, but what are we gaining from this?
What are you losing?
Then why do we have it in place? We're not gaining,
Why
we're
don't
not
we?
losing. Why do we have it in place?
We have it in place because the town is still responding to the pandemic actively. It's not the same level it was in March of 2020. It's not the same level it was in November of 2020, but we're still responding to the pandemic. And we don't have any other plan to respond with. So tonight, the motion I would entertain is that the council convene and develop a recovery plan for the rest of the pandemic. Put that into place, and then we rescind the emergency so that we have a plan going for it. Because if you rescind the emergency, or you ask me to rescind the emergency, and I decide to do that, we don't have a plan still, and we still have things we have to deal with. We're still dealing with stuff. So I would really encourage you, tonight's motion should really be, let's put a plan in place so that we can move this off the record and get it out, be done with it.
Could part of that plan look like rewriting this? Could
Yeah.
that be the first step of that
Step
plan?
one is we're going to scale back what the town's response to COVID-19 looks like.
Because I think many community members would agree that there are parts of this that can be changed and appropriately so. But I think that there's a lot of the other half. I think that if we do rewrite it, and adjust things, I think we will kind of appeal to everybody. I think there's a way to find, to really honor.
Absolutely. I think you could rewrite,
entire
I think you could write the plan with the elements, write a plan with the elements of this that you like and the elements of this that you don't like, you can discard. There doesn't need to be a declaration even being rewritten. You can just write a 3-page paper that says, here's what it is.
Then I want to make a motion to schedule a committee of the whole meeting ASAP to sit down, analyze this declaration, see if we want to be in an emergency. If we do, what does it look like? If we don't, what does it look like? But we need to do it right now. I mean, we were supposed to have a committee of a whole meeting at the beginning of 2020 to go over the purchasing policy, and we've never scheduled it.
Correct.
So that's why I'm fearful to do that, but that's my motion. There you go.
Is there a second?
There's your direction.
And just to be in full disclosure, I wrote committee of the whole COVID recovery plan. Is that short enough?
That's fine.
Does that adequately capture what you stated? Is there a second to that?
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Wonder.
That would be to leave it in effect until it's rewritten.
It would stay as it is until we decide, are we rewriting it? Are we terminating it? What are we doing with it?
I agree.
Is that a second? Yeah, thank you. It's been moved by Ms. Devlin, second by Ms. Wandler to schedule a committee of the whole meeting as soon as possible to discuss a COVID recovery plan for the town of Stevensville. Council discussion. Okay, public comment.
Everybody was wearing earplugs. The point Mr. Cruz made was after 90 days, this was a moot point. It wasn't in effect anymore. And here you are arguing about something that has been dead for almost a year. The governor has also said there is no emergency. And then Mr. Dewey sits there and says he'll listen to you and make his decision. It isn't his decision to make. It isn't really yours. The emergency is over because after 90 days, there is no emergency unless it's renewed. How hard is that for you guys to understand? I stood here earlier and said you should not vote on the minutes if you weren't here. You should abstain. Every one of you voted for the minutes. Do you not hear anything? There is no emergency in this town after 90 days unless it's renewed. The governor has also agreed with that. And yet Mr. Dewey says, I'll make up my mind. He's telling you that you have power now that you didn't know you had, and yet he's still taking the power. There should be no meeting about this. It's over. If you want another emergency declaration, he can ask for it and you can vote on it. But there is no emergency according to the law. Put your listening ears on and hear what people have to say. You could go on and on and on and on and on, but like I said, the basic point of this is it's over until you decide it isn't. If you want to have a cow meeting about that, fine and dandy. But there is no emergency law that he can use to buy $92,000 worth of computers or whatever he wants to spend the money on. Did you know that he has a program where he tracks every one of the employees of his town? It's on their phone. It's called Home Base. If somebody goes out to lunch, he knows where they are. This is a man that controls everything, and he wants to continue to do it. It's not true. There is no emergency, folks.
Any further public comment? Oh, Ms. Barker. As soon as we're through public comment, we'll.
Stacy Barker, 104 Westlet. I think listening to Jen, listening to what the council has to say, I think we do need to move it back to town hall. There's so much stuff that as a public citizen, we're not able to see anymore. Claims was one of them. It used to be up on the screen for everybody to see. We used to be able to follow the agenda items with what was there. We get a piece of paper. And if we don't know what those items are prior to, we're left out. It's time we move back to City Hall where we can involve our public and our citizens to know what is happening in our town. And I think a lot of people are scared. Yes, don't get me wrong. I see it in the store every day. But I hear it as well. We're not listening to our citizens here in Stevensville. It's time that we open back up and let them be involved as well. Thank you.
Any further public comment? All right, Ms. Wander, did you have a remark?
I have a question. Are FEMA dollars, when did they quit coming? Or when did they close FEMA?
It's still open. That's part of the reason why we're.
That is why we have to have something on the books. We have to have what we have. If we delete it, FEMA quits talking to us.
Essentially, yes.
I have done that work with the government, and it started at a certain time and it ended at a certain time, and any time in between, they gotta follow the rules.
I remember receiving the email, and I was working from home at the time, and I remember vividly, I received the email from FEMA saying this funding is available, the public assistance program, da 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 da, and this was before CARES really rolled out hard, and so FEMA was getting ready, ramping up their response, and I went ahead and initiated the paperwork that they had requested from local governments to get funding, and the gal who manages it, Helena, emailed me and said, I need a declaration to complete the file, and then we'll have you rostered. And I remember I was going to respond to an email. I remember calling her, and I remember saying, do I have to? Do I have to do a declaration? And they were adamant, yes, you had to have it done. Because I knew putting this into place would cause some feelings. So, but we had to do it in order to qualify for the funding that we have received. Ms. Devlin.
Is this expired or not?
No, it's not. The declaration does not expire until the local emergency is terminated when the principal, it says, when the principal executive officer determines that the emergency no longer exists. Ms. Rodabaugh was referring to Ordinance 166, which did in fact terminate after 90 days. This is a separate document. With that, then, if there's no further comment from council, we'll go ahead and call for the vote on the motion to hold a committee of the whole meeting on the subject. Ms. Bertha.
Councilmember Allen?
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin?
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington?
Aye.
And Councilmember Wander?
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Okay, the next item on your agenda this evening is approval of contract for the Stevensville Airport Gate Project. You opened bids at the previous meeting at the council held, and this contract is before you for approval. I don't have the contract price inserted in this document, and I don't know what it is. It's the bid amount. Do you have the bid?
Let me see if it's different than the one that he sent in the email, but I think it's the same.
Okay, and this is the one you sent. Hang on, guys. Sorry.
Sorry.
Just occurred to me.
Just double checking Tyler's. Okay. Here's this.
page are you looking for the dollar amount? Because that's exactly what I have.
All I have is the total grant amount of 167,530. Do you have the bid amount from
Not that I'm seeing.
bidders?
This is what I received from Tyler.
Yeah. You don't have your minutes or any notes from the last meeting of the dollar amount, do you?
Would that be
It's
something?
Pavlik. Yeah, and
Should be.
we don't have, yeah, it's the bid you opened at the last meeting. The dollar amount stated of that bid is the dollar amount that will be inserted into the contract. Any chance any of you wrote it down and brought it back with you?
July 22nd was our last meeting.
Yes. It should be at the
Airport gate contract, Tyler, again, bid.
Oh, you didn't put anything
At
down.
this point, no, not until I re-listen to the audio.
I didn't write it down. So-
And the one that's attached is what was given to me by Tyler yesterday, 2 days
Yeah,
ago.
our engineer omitted. Administrative salary. Hang on. There we go. So $117,200.
What should be in there? 117.2.
Mm-hmm.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Devlin, seconded by Mr. Luddington to approve the construction contract that is for the Stevensville Airport Gate project.
100% covered by FAA funds.
That's correct. Ordinarily,
Ordinarily would be 90-10.
correct, but because of
Because
COVID,
we have, and also because we had an accident with a deer and
yes.
an airplane.
So the accident prompted us up to the top of the list, and then COVID gave us the other 10%. Yeah.
So the amount that's going to be written into this contract is $117,200.
Correct.
If it's 117,201, I won't pay it.
It won't be in the budget, so we won't pay it anyway.
So tell Tyler we better not go over.
So, yeah, we'll share that with him. That sentiment is loud and clear with Tyler. He and I have that conversation frequently. Any further council discussion on the contract? Public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll call for the vote. Ms. Bertha.
Councilmember Allen.
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Luddington.
Aye.
Councilmember Wandler.
I,
Okay, motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to item I, discussion decision, the first addendum to attorney contract with City Attorney Scott Owens. We have advertised for 4 or 5 months now for a new city attorney. Mr. Owens notified us early on that he was seeking other opportunities in his career and was no longer interested in serving as the town's city attorney. So we've been advertising for a city attorney and received no response. And we've been even flexible in that advertising to say, if you want prosecution or you just want the civil work, pick one and we'll maybe try to find 2 attorneys. We're trying to massage that and be creative in how we address it. So far, no one's submitted an RFP for that. And so obviously the town has a very difficult time operating without an attorney, especially in the prosecution realm because of city court. That really bogs down the criminal justice system for our community if we don't have a prosecuting attorney in place. Mr. Owens has agreed on a month-to-month basis to stay on staff and hold over in that position until another appointment can be made. However, he does have some stipulations he'd like to address in his contract. Namely, when the contract was originally written, he was commuting from Missoula. Now he has relocated to Helena. And so we would reimburse mileage to and from Helena under the new contract. the administration is taking steps during this interim phase to limit mileage. In fact, all of the civil work, he has not had to come. So as the city attorney, as the town attorney, he has not had to charge any mileage for a long time because we've been able to work that way. Where it gets pricey is in the prosecution because the judge is less apt to allow telephonic appearances. So I'm gearing to have a conversation with her about how we can be more flexible with telephonic appearances and allow the city attorney, because there now is a cost to require him to come over here from Helena. And it will add up over time. So we're going to encourage telephonic appearances as much as we can where it's absolutely possible. But we're kind of in a rock and hard place and don't have much else of an option. And Mr. Owens has been gracious to stay on as long as we modify that term. Ms. Devlin.
So 2 months.
Yes.
So he's only willing to stay on for 2 months.
I think we're taking baby steps. Depends on how hard I twist his arm. But the clock is ticking. We can't, certainly by the end of the year, we're out of time. He can't commit past the end of the year for us because of his other obligations. So we're hitting the target with 2 months, but we're already a month into the 2 months.
I'll make a motion to approve. And I'll second that motion.
Okay, so moved by Ms. Devlin and second by Ms. Allen to approve first addendum to attorney contract with City Attorney Scott Owens. Council comments? Public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Ms. Bertha?
Councilmember Allen.
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington.
Aye.
Councilmember Wandler.
Aye.
All right, thank you. That motion passes unanimously. For the executive report, in rapid fire, I'll try to get through everything for you in a reasonable amount of time. Probably some have noticed 3rd Street paving is commenced and is actually near wrapping up. The main stretch of paving should have been completed today. They'll come back tomorrow and do some of the approaches for the streets that cross 3rd. I'm told the engineers estimate that they should be 99% off the project by Wednesday of next week. So they're wrapping up. We have citizens who are concerned about holes and restoration in their yards. And yes, absolutely, we'll be repairing all of that before the project completely punches out. So, rapidly, this construction company has been extremely responsive to the town's needs in terms of, if we ask for some sort of accommodation or to make sure something's communicated, they're Johnny on the spot and right with it. So I don't expect this organ or this company to linger for weeks on end to get vegetation reestablished and all of that. I think once the paving's done, they're going to come in, clean up and punch it out and be done so that we'll write their check and they can move on. So we're looking forward to wrapping that project up in anticipation of the school year starting, because that was one stipulation. It had to be done by the end of school, or by the beginning of school rather. I received word today from Mr. Owens that the investigation into the legal fees claim is wrapping up. And he expected to be able to deliver a report to the council tomorrow afternoon, if not first thing Monday. So we'll await that. I just wanted to give you a heads up to watch for that email from him. A committee of the whole meeting is throwing a wrench into this a little bit, but I would like to try to set dates to start budget workshops and do so pretty rapidly. We would have a preliminary budget ready in format for council to start workshopping as soon as Wednesday, the 18th, if you would be inclined to pull a meeting together that evening. Or a meeting or two. It depends on how much time you want to spend with each other that week.
I would be willing to do a meeting.
a meeting the week of the 16th?
Okay, yeah, on the 18th.
Okay. Could we,
Not two?
No, I got a full week.
I will be telecommuting.
Yeah, you'll be, yeah.
okay,
You're in school.
No, but I will be out of town, but I will telecommute.
It would be a night
we
meeting.
can facilitate. It's council's prerogative as to when you'd exactly like to hold that workshop. If you want to do it early evening, helps us minimize gaps in schedules.
When are we gonna do
office.
our council as a whole meeting?
Well, that would be my thing with the budget was on the list before your cow thing was, so I was gonna ask when you wanted to do your cow thing. That you could even hold earlier in the week if you want, as soon as Tuesday the 17th. In fact, if you want, I don't know if you dare even try to knock out, begin to address both issues in the same evening. That's very ambitious, but yeah. So I guess I'm curious what your availability is over the next couple of weeks and how many meetings we could cram in there and how much time we could spend with each other. I mean, do you want to, I don't think we have a ton agendized for the 26th meeting. I mean, tentatively, we had your budget adoption penciled in. If we could get a couple of workshops in before then.
I'm available the 18th. And then I'm free open that next week in the evening.
You're gone the week following.
I was gonna leave on the 18th, but I could leave on the 19th and be back on the 24th.
And you said evening, Jamie?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're cramming everyone's vacations before school starts, so. Does the 18th works for everyone?
Oh, yeah.
We did a more. Oh, no.
We're doing the afternoon.
No, that's a work.
How early can you meet, Jamie?
So Wednesday, I can probably be here by 5.
Okay. Is 5 too early to meet on Wednesday? Is that a reasonable expectation? Okay. We'll set our first workshop for the 18th at 5 p.m. and get that rocking and rolling. And we'll just spend as much time as you want to spend on working through that. And then the following week of the 23rd, how does that availability look for folks? If we could get another meeting or two, well, you've already got one meeting. So I guess where I was going before Ms. Devlin confirmed her 18th was hypothetically, if you wanted to consider your COVID stuff, you could do so at your council meeting on the 26th. You don't have administrative reports. And so, and your agenda is not.
At this time, we only have one thing.
Yeah,
pending.
we don't have a lot on that agenda scheduled right now. So, you want to.
What are you doing?
Coming back on the 24th. I'm not gonna leave till the 19th. And keep mom happy, I gotta come back.
Do we need to have a budget meeting that week?
It would be great because I think you're going to need more than one meeting to get through it.
So the 25th, I could be here by 5. And the rest of it would have to be late evening or
Okay.
7.
Let's tentatively schedule something at 5 on the 25th, and I'll be in touch. And if we need to modify, then we can. On the 25th, it would be 5. So 18th and 25th, 5 p.m. Because we're starting pretty early, I'm okay with the time frame we have. So.
And then the 26th, are you guys fine with discussing the declaration of the emergency at our council?
Discussing COVID on the 26th meeting agenda?
Yeah, let's put it on the agenda.
Okay, we'll just work through it.
Do some research.
Groovy. Appreciate your indulgence there. That is very helpful.
Is that the 25th or 26th?
So you have as of today, you have a meeting on the 18th at 5, a meeting on the 25th at 5, and a meeting on the 26th at 7. Yes.
Which is the count?
There isn't actually a Cal meeting scheduled. The 18th and 25th will be budget meetings, and then they're going to put the COVID-19 stuff on the 26th agenda.
So you passed motion or resolution to have a Cal meeting?
Well, yes, so in the past, we've had the Cal meeting and then the council meeting.
We'll put the Cal meeting on the agenda. Can we be flexible? Is that okay? I mean,
Well, we kind of have to, we've passed the motion, unless we want to pass it up.
That's
I
what
mean,
we've done.
the intent of your motion was to meet and discuss COVID-19's recovery. That was the intent of your motion. I think by placing it on your council agenda, you're meeting that intent.
The difference is the rule of engagement, a Cal meeting versus a council meeting.
Correct.
You'll have a Cal meeting scheduled on the 26th. Schedule it at 7 and you'll do your council meeting following. How's that?
We've done that.
I mean, we'll make it work. As you've heard from the department heads, most of them, Creamery Picnic was a resounding success this year, especially from respects of the town's involvement. We upped our ante this year compared to previous years where we had staff coming in on Saturday to assist with the various functions with road closures and all of those detours and things, which is unusual. Typically, we don't do that. We rely on volunteer help to get those things done. It made all the difference in making sure the event was safe and smooth. And so for that, we're grateful for those staff members who took time out of their Saturday to come in, and albeit they were paid for it, they helped out and made sure everything went without a hitch. So that's awesome. Certainly proud of the way that the departments cooperated. That is also something I haven't seen a whole lot of in my tenure in this organization. On that level, they just didn't miss a beat. I'm very proud of them. So appreciate that and the community's involvement in that event. It was great to experience. At your next council meeting, I hope that your department reports will be more interactive. We will utilize the screen because we will be ready to launch the department report portion of the My Sidewalk dashboard. We've done a ton of work in getting storytelling and data points and all of those things into the system with the vendor that's providing it to us. And we'll be ready at that September council meeting where your department head reports come in. They'll be able to give their report off of that screen and with those data points and make it a bit more interactive. So, and it'll be available online as well for anyone who wants to peruse that. So we're getting really close to final launch late September but we'll be ready for the department head reports in early September for that. So we discussed that today with them and they were totally on board. So we're moving along on that project and I'm impressed with what we see so far. I'm going to clarify one remark that bothered me and was just an outright just misinformation. Home base. And I think you all understand what home base does for this organization. It's our time tracking system. Employees clock in, employees clock out. We've used it for several years. But for the public's edification, so they understand, we don't use it to track employees. Like, that's not what it does. It takes a GPS location of where you clock in and where you clock out to ensure that you're not clocking in where you shouldn't be clocking in. Meaning, if you clock in from home and then decide to drive to work, we don't really want to pay you to drive to work. It's a theft measure. So it tracks that you're clocking in where you're supposed to be clocking in for certain employees. But I promise you, I don't have a monitor up in my office that's got little blips of my employees' heads showing where they are in town. I'm not interested in that. I don't hire people I can't trust to go out and do their jobs in the field. But Homebase does track it when they clock in and out. And that's just a feature of the program that we use. So no, I'm not doing that. One other comment on more of an upbeat note, perhaps. that I heard tonight was Mr. Luddington mentioned the opportunity and room for improvement that the organization has. And I just wanted to express my sentiment of how pleasant this experience with this council has been over the short tenure that you've all been together. I think this is Ms. Wandler's your third meeting. So we're getting rolling again and getting back up on our feet. And I just appreciate the fact that yes, there's room for improvement, but I think if there's any body or any group of people who can provide the best opportunity for improvement, I'm privileged to work alongside all of you. So I just wanted to express that. I also want to, I guess, without the sake of rehashing something, I have made decisions and taken actions in my course of work that have caused a lot of stir amongst a group in the community. I won't say it across the community because I don't think that's the case. It's a group in the community, and it has made probably your experience in this room and on the council less than desirable. If it's anything remotely to what my experience has been through those trials. And for that, you do have my apology. It wasn't my intent when I took those actions to drag you all through something that was that unpleasant. It wasn't my intent to drag our citizens through something that was that unpleasant. Certainly wasn't my intent for the staff to have to experience that either. So I genuinely apologize for the way that those things unfolded and transpired. I appreciate Mr. Luddington's remarks in that I don't have any malicious intent. I didn't learn how to do this job in another city. I didn't go to Missoula and learn how to do it. I didn't go to New York and learn how to do it or anywhere else. In fact, one of the people I learned how to do this job from is sitting across the table from me. I appreciate that mentorship that he offers and the experience I had in his tenure in his office. I do what I do and I know what I know because of my experience over the last decade with the town of Stevensville as an organization. So I guess thank you for the comment of room for improvement, because that's what we strive for. A lot of what you'll see in the budget coming up is facilitating those improvements and trying to do so with sustainable resources in terms of doing all of that work at a high expectation, during a high expectation of service with very little money. The reason I don't have a preliminary budget for you guys because we're still trying to narrow those numbers down and solve some problems before we throw them on your plate. In terms of where we sit financially, we sit in a good place, but we want to do more than we have the money for. So naturally, we have to cut some things back. But with that, I'll turn it over to town council comments or any questions you have of me.
I don't think that people realize how much more expensive things become. I thought about it when you were talking about fire department. My husband was on fire department, don't tell anyone, 50 years ago. They showed up with their clothes on and they went to the fire. Now the insurance laws and everything require them to have this $3,500 equipment. And people don't realize the laws change and times change, and we didn't have computers either, but we need computers. So I don't think a lot of times the community understands that the costs do go up because of the changing times. It's going up real fast.
Further council comments?
We had an outstanding turnout for a creamery picnic this year. It was a lot of fun. And yes, the town stepped in a lot of areas. I'm really appreciative of that. We had a lot of really great volunteers, and I just want to thank all the community members that participated in the creamery picnic. It was great.
You did a good job.
Thank you.
Okay, any further council comments for the good of the order? Board reports?
Planning and zoning had a meeting that we kind of, we're looking at this, the Department of Commerce subdivision regulation, that blanket policy that they put out for towns to edit. Had one member of the community there. I think our scheduling was off a little bit because of some other things that happened, but it was a pretty productive meeting. I think we got through some pretty specific things that were in there that we might not or might not like, or some things that don't really fit with this particular area very well. There's a lot more work to do. We're hoping to do that again at the end of the month. I think that's the 26th or the 25th, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, it is.
It is.
Oh,
So we might
traps.
have
Oh,
to-
dang.
We might have to
And
double,
it's at-
we might have to double up.
It's at 6:30.
Oh, yeah.
Usually it's 6:30, so we might have
It's
to,
at 5.
we might have to take a break for planning and zoning board meeting, and then when they adjourn, we'll get back into the budget.
Well,
Does that sound fun?
No,
so
not
we'll
now.
have to double up a little bit. And we're counting on some more public involvement. I think there are people that are interested. I would like to continue to try to get that interest. We now have another subdivision that's going to be coming about. We don't have to scrutinize the same way that we have with the last ones and have the same kind of result from the public. So we're headed down that path and working this.
Any further board reports? Okay, with that,
One other thing, I did get an email from someone in the FAA that was directed to Paul O'Banky.
oh,
I forwarded it to Tim
perfect.
so that he could see what it was on, because it was just Paul and Town of Stevensville.
Yeah, you have his, old- yeah, that
I have
makes
his
sense,
old
yeah.
email. So that's the first one I've ever gotten. I directed to him.
Okay.
When he was
It was
contact.
probably a rogue, yeah, they might have used an old list.
And I think it was something about updating what was going on at the airport and the classifications that they had.
Great, thanks for sending that on, Tim, hopefully he'll see that and handle it. Okay, well, there's nothing further, so we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thanks for your time this evening.
Family picture.